Hello everybody, hopefully you're having a wonderful, fantabulous, and a mystical day. Over here on the mystical side of life, on this episode of the Dryad walkthrough of the painting, I'm going to be talking about colors and paint and how I put together the piece for the Dryad piece that I did a while back for the Ross Draws Art Challenge. Going into the whole color scheme, like I was saying last episode, I was doing the wash method, and I did expand a little bit from where I was with that process before I started recording here, so my apologies, but I will explain what I did. So roughly speaking, all I really did was separate the hard lines and the soft lines, and then kind of made a nice form with that. So when I say this, a lot of what painting is you're just identifying where the soft line starts and where it ends, especially like where it blurs and things like that, because a lot of the time when you're painting, all you're really doing is that colors come into play, but colors are specific to like when you're laying in all the colors and putting the flats in, like I was talking about earlier in the last episode. If you haven't watched that episode, I will link it at the end of the video in case you want to jump back and go watch that. You can feel free to do so. But right now in the video, I'm actually doing accents and like rendering little bits of pieces here and there out, just enough so that you can see the form. I didn't want to do this piece and render every little thing out because I feel like it would have been a little bit redundant, and because I had a time limit of 2 hours, I was very much so like, I'll get it as done as I possibly can, and then I'll move forward from there. By the way, my apologies if you can hear some background noise. I do have other people here in the room with me, but hopefully you guys can work with it. And so, what I'm doing specifically here is I'm separating the top, the middle, and the bottom, right? So, when you are doing a piece and you're doing, or not even a piece, but there is the separation of the side, the top, and the bottom. Right? So if you're talking about a square in like any environment, or just a square in general, like in space, actually, you always want to identify the top and the side with two different values, and then the bottom obviously with a different value. And the reason that you do this is because it creates a three-dimensional form within the object so that you can identify the shape and what size it is and things like that. And like the roundness and things of that nature. So in the center of the piece where you have the abdomen, or even on the crystal that I'm currently working on, I'm separating the values using colors. It's a little bit more difficult to explain when it comes to colors, the whole value thing, but it's basically the same as it is with black and white, at least to my knowledge. And that is, if it's black and white, right? Black and white being like the separators for like color, so I guess not separators, but they're just black and white. So black would be the bottom side, right? From the side that it has the least amount of light, or the side that is furthest to the curve. And then gray would be the middle, and then white would be the top, because the top is where the light source is coming from, therefore identifying a different plane. So for the crystal, I'm identifying 4 planes. So I have one side, which is the lightest side, the second side, which is the medium side, and the bottom side, which is the darkest side. But crystals in particular are a little bit more picky with it because they're crystals. So you kind of have to fudge it a little bit, or at least that's what I did here, because I didn't want the focus to be on the crystal. I wanted it to be on the centerpiece, which is a reason why I did that like bluish kind of color coming out into that green. Because I wanted to accent that centerpiece. And that's why I have a little bit of those dark lines in the center by her chest and by her neck, is because I wanted to accent that piece or that part. So whenever you do your piece, or any piece in general, and you want to accent a certain part, treat it as though that piece is the center point, so you want to render that out as much as possible. Or not as much as possible, but more than everything else that's surrounding it. And it's important to note that it doesn't have to be fully rendered in order for it to look nice. It just has to be rendered more than its surrounding environment, because your eye will naturally go towards the things that look the most finished. Right now I'm crisping up the edges with that green kind of tint that's on the outer perimeter of the orange like cloak thing that's made out of the leaves. Notice on the bottom half, I kind of have it blending into the background. That's really intentional because I wanted it to feel like it was painterly, right? I don't do a lot of traditional work myself in terms of like paints and like learning colors and things like that for this certain type of method of like washing, but I do a lot of digital art. And what I've learned is that a lot of digital, or not digital work, but a lot of traditional work has this kind of method where they kind of blur the lines of the colors on the perimeter of it, because it helps kind of unify the painting, and it helps like you focus on the parts that are important. So that's why on the outer brims of the actual painting, I kind of left it a little bit unfinished and like a little bit blurred and like mushy-ish, is because I wanted to kind of give off that feel. And so right here at around 6 minutes and 20 seconds on the video, I am rendering out a little bit of everything. I like to jump around a lot because it helps my brain kind of figure out what I'm going to do. But if you are new to doing this kind of method, I've done a couple of pieces like this. I would not recommend jumping around as much. I jump around a lot simply because I'm very jittery, and not so much that I want to get the piece done, but I want to get a general feeling for the entire piece as a whole before I settle down and say, okay, this is going to be the centerpiece. Going in, I knew it was going to be her head and the her chest and like those like flails on the side and things like that. But I wanted to make sure that that's what it was, and part of that is exploring and making sure you want to do what you want to do. On the bottom half of the piece right now, I just added a couple of separating of the form. So I did, like I was talking about with the cube earlier, where I gave it a top. I put the top being the that yellower tint because of the light that's from the inside. So it's kind of hitting that brim. I could have blurred it a little bit more, but I think I kept it that way. And the reason I kept it that way is because it gives that nice cut to the line from like the kind of blurry-ish, like melding colors there at the bottom into that hard, crisp edge. I don't know if I go into it with black and I do a little bit of line work in there a little bit later, but right now I'm just cleaning it up and making sure the composition works. And you can see on the right side, I removed the palette because I wasn't using it anymore. I was using the colors that are already established, and that's important. So when you're working on a piece and you're doing the painting stage, when you lay in your flats and you start like you finish that portion, you don't want to add any more color or introduce any new colors. The reason behind this is because the more you introduce, it's not going to make the piece bad, but it's going to make it more complex, and it's going to make it difficult for you to render if it's too complicated. A lot of my work I like to keep fairly simple, because something that I had learned within my process of growing and like painting and stuff is that you have to focus on making things simple and then go from there. And sometimes it's difficult to do, but you kind of got to get used to it, and you got to get into the rhythm of it. So right now I'm adding flares to it, and I'm adding little things that are going to make it pop and make you focus on the center point. So what I did was I first started by blurring the whole piece, and then I kept the center in focus, and you can do that with a layer that does blur, Gaussian blur. And then after that, I inserted a layer that I was using for a different piece. This is a method and technique that I had learned from Ross Tran. So if you want more on that, feel free to check out his channel. If you would like me to explain what I learned from it and how he critiqued my work from a different type of piece, I will be happy to put a video up on that. Just let me know in the comment section below. But going back to the whole method, it's a cool method, and it's a good way to add that like nice finishing flair to the piece, right? Because as it stood, the piece wasn't looking too completed. It was looking nice, but it doesn't have that flair of, oh, it's done, those finishing touches. So this stage is essentially that. When you get to this stage, it's important to know most of the time it's not a good idea to continue painting on top of it, because it's supposed to be the finishing touch. So you do this at the very end. Sometimes I mess up and I paint over it because, I'm a rebel, and that's just how I roll. But that doesn't mean that you have to make that same mistake. So keep that in mind and make sure that you do that only when you know that you can get the painting done quickly. Or not quickly, but you don't have to do as many strokes on top of it because it muddies up the painting sometimes. And I've learned that the hard way. I might do a separate video on that, but as it stands right now, I'm not too sure what kind of videos I want to make or what kind of videos you guys are interested in. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think you guys want to see more videos on like how I render surfaces, like, or not surfaces, but I guess objects, like the leaves and stuff, or how the light and how I work on colors and the finishing touches that I'm learning from Ross Tran or just anywhere really. I'm a big fan of Ahmed Al-Duri, and the way that he works, he touches everything up near the end, which is really cool because you can kind of see the piece come together, and it's really nice to see that. And I see that in a lot of the artists that I really like too, but one of my more favorite artists, he does it from the beginning, and it's really it's crazy. It like comes together really quickly. And I'll make a video separate on that, and I'll explore that a little bit more and explain it to you guys why I like it so much. So here I'm adding gradients, not like a gradient map, but just a gradient. The reason I do this is because we have two sources of light in the piece, and I wanted to add that kind of flare at the end. And there you go. That's the piece. Alright guys, if you like the video, make sure you smash that like button. Comment down below what was most helpful to you, and what do you think I should make a video on next? Do you think I should make a video on how I do lighting, or how I render surface on like the head or the horns or anything? If you have trouble with the colors, what do you think I could, you know, if you guys want me to clarify something that I was doing? Like I said, leave a comment down below, and yeah, we'll see what happens from there. Alright guys, and as always, hit that subscribe button, because the more people I get subscribed, then it's just better and fun, because people are actually watching my stuff, and it's not just me doing rambling off myself. All right guys, make sure you hit the bell icon as well, and as always guys, don't forget to stay mystical. Boop.